Have you ever found yourself scrolling through YouTube at 2 a.m. looking for something to help you drift off to sleep, only to stumble upon a 40-minute video about the hidden connections between Family Guy episodes? Well, you're not alone, and today we're diving deep into the surprisingly intricate world of Family Guy lore that has somehow become the internet's favorite bedtime story. From the mysterious timeline inconsistencies that have puzzled fans for decades, to the dark theories that lurk beneath Seth MacFarlane's seemingly random humor, we're about to explore why this animated sitcom has developed one of the most dedicated and analytical fan bases in television history. Picture this. It's Sunday night, you've got work tomorrow, but instead of getting some rest, you find yourself 3 hours into a rabbit hole about whether Stewie Griffin can actually time travel or if it's all in his imagination. Sound familiar? The phenomenon of Family Guy lore videos has taken over late-night YouTube, creating an entire subgenre of content that combines nostalgic comfort with mind-bending analysis. These aren't just random observations either. We're talking about carefully crafted theories that connect episodes from different seasons, analyze character development arcs that span decades, and uncover Easter eggs that the writers probably forgot they even included. Let's start with the foundation of Family Guy lore, the Griffin family timeline. Now, you might think that a show about a talking baby and a dog with a novel would be pretty straightforward, but you'd be wrong. The series has been on the air since 1999, with that infamous cancellation and resurrection period, and during that time, the characters have somehow managed to travel through time, and exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Peter Griffin has held dozens of jobs, died multiple times, and somehow always returns to his position at the brewery as if nothing happened. This isn't lazy. It's actually part of a larger narrative structure that treats continuity more like a suggestion than a rule. The real complexity begins when you start tracking the relationships between characters across seasons. Take Cleveland Brown, for example. He starts as Peter's neighbor and best friend, moves away to star in his own spin-off show, then returns as if nothing happened. But here's where it gets interesting. Eagle-eyed fans have noticed subtle changes in his personality and relationships that suggest the Cleveland who returned isn't quite the same person who left. This has led to theories about parallel dimensions, simulation theory, and even the possibility that the entire series takes place in some kind of purgatory where characters are doomed to repeat similar scenarios with slight variations. Speaking of characters who've changed, let's talk about Brian Griffin, arguably the most complex character in the Family Guy universe. Brian started as the voice of reason, the intellectual counterpoint to the family's chaos. But over the seasons, he's evolved into something much darker and more complicated. He's struggled with alcoholism, had relationships with human women that border on the inappropriate, and occasionally displays knowledge and abilities that seem impossible for a dog. Some fans theorize that Brian isn't actually a dog at all, but rather a human who's been transformed or cursed, which would explain his human-level intelligence, his ability to drive, and his complex emotional relationships. The Stewie Griffin timeline represents perhaps the most intricate piece of Family Guy lore. Early seasons presented Stewie as an evil genius baby bent on world domination and matricide. His sophisticated vocabulary, advanced inventions, and time travel capabilities made him seem almost supernatural. However, as the series progressed, these elements became more subdued, leading to the popular theory that we're watching Stewie's intelligence and abilities fade as he becomes a more typical child. This regression theory suggests that baby genius abilities are temporary and that Stewie is slowly becoming a normal kid, which explains why his elaborate schemes become less frequent and his vocabulary becomes more age-appropriate. But here's where things get really interesting. The time travel episodes. Stewie's time machine has been used multiple times throughout the series, creating alternate timelines and paradoxes that have never been fully resolved. In some episodes, characters retain memories of time travel adventures, while in others, they seem to forget entirely. This inconsistency isn't accidental. It's actually evidence of a multiverse theory that suggests every major character change or continuity error is actually evidence of timeline splits and reality alterations. The show's approach to death and resurrection adds another layer to the lore. Characters die and come back to life regularly, sometimes within the same episode, sometimes across seasons. Peter has been crushed, exploded, and dismembered, only to appear perfectly fine in the next scene. Brian was famously killed off and replaced, only to be brought back through time travel. These deaths aren't treated as permanent consequences, but rather as temporary inconveniences, suggesting that the Family Guy universe operates under different rules than our reality. Let's delve into the recurring background characters who form the backbone of Quahog society. Characters like Herbert, the elderly neighbor, the greased-up deaf guy, and the various news anchors create a sense of continuity that makes Quahog feel like a real place with its own culture and history. These characters often appear in the background of unrelated scenes, creating a web of interconnected stories that reward observant viewers. Some fans have mapped out the social connections between these background characters, creating elaborate family trees and relationship charts that rival those of epic fantasy novels. The show's treatment of pop culture references creates another fascinating aspect of its lore. Family Guy is famous for its cutaway gags that reference everything from 1,980 seconds movies to obscure historical events. But these references aren't random. They often connect to overarching themes and character development. Peter's obsession with 1,980 seconds culture reflects his refusal to grow up and accept adult responsibilities. Stewie's references to Broadway musicals and classic literature hint at his sophisticated nature and possibly his future sexuality. These cultural touchstones create a shared language that binds the characters together while also dating the episodes in specific time periods. The geography of Quahog itself tells a story. The town layout has changed dramatically over the years, with new businesses appearing and disappearing, neighborhoods shifting, and landmarks moving around. This geographic inconsistency has led some fans to theorize that Quahog exists in a state of constant flux, possibly as a reflection of the characters' unstable mental states, or as evidence that the entire series takes place in some kind of dream or simulation. Religious and philosophical themes run deeper through Family Guy than most casual viewers realize. Peter's Catholic upbringing clashes with his hedonistic lifestyle, creating internal conflicts that occasionally surface in episodes dealing with morality and consequences. Lois's Protestant background and her complex relationship with her wealthy parents add layers of class and religious commentary that inform her character development. These spiritual elements aren't always played for laughs. They sometimes provide genuine insight into the character's motivations and fears. The show's handling of mental health issues, while often controversial, creates another dimension of character analysis. Peter's impulsive behavior and lack of consequences could be seen as symptoms of various psychological conditions. Meg's depression and social isolation are treated both as punchlines and as genuine character traits that affect her relationships and life choices. Chris's awkwardness and social difficulties hint at developmental issues that are never directly addressed but inform his character arc. Family Guy's relationship with its own cancellation and resurrection has become part of its mythology. The show was canceled after 3 seasons, then brought back due to strong DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns. This real-world history has been incorporated into the show's narrative, with characters occasionally breaking the fourth wall to reference their own cancellation. This metatextual approach creates a unique relationship between the show and its audience, acknowledging that both the characters and viewers are aware they're participating in a constructed narrative. The evolution of the show's animation style tells its own story. Early seasons featured simpler character designs and more limited animation, while later seasons showcase increasingly sophisticated visual techniques and more detailed character expressions. This technical progression mirrors the character's emotional development and the show's growing complexity. Fans have created detailed comparisons showing how character designs have evolved, often using these changes to support theories about character development and timeline alterations. The voice acting performances add another layer of lore analysis. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, and subtle changes in his vocal performances over the years have been interpreted as character development cues. Peter's voice has become more exaggerated and childish, supporting theories about his regression into immaturity. Stewie's voice has become less posh and more typical for his age, reinforcing the theory that his genius is fading. Guest appearances and celebrity references create a complex web of real-world connections that blur the line between fiction and reality. When real celebrities appear as themselves, they often interact with the characters in ways that suggest the Family Guy universe exists parallel to our own, with similar historical events and cultural touchstones, but different rules and consequences. The show's treatment of social and political issues has evolved significantly over its run, reflecting changing attitudes and sensibilities. Early episodes featured edgier humor and more controversial content, while recent seasons have shown more awareness of social responsibility. This evolution isn't just about changing times. It reflects character growth and maturity, particularly in how the family members relate to each other and their community. As we drift off to sleep thinking about these interconnected stories and hidden meanings, it becomes clear why Family Guy lore has become such a popular bedtime topic. The show's seemingly chaotic structure actually contains layers of complexity that reward deep analysis and careful attention. Whether you're falling asleep to theories about Stewie's true nature, pondering the implications of Brian's human relationships, or trying to map out the Quahog timeline, Family Guy offers an unexpectedly rich universe that continues to surprise and engage viewers even after decades on the air. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the world of Family Guy, nothing is ever quite as simple as it first appears. What if I told you that the chaotic world of Quahog, Rhode Island, holds some of the most intricate storytelling mysteries hidden in plain sight? Tonight, we're diving deep into the sprawling universe of Family Guy, uncovering the hidden lore, forgotten storylines, and interconnected mysteries that make this animated sitcom far more complex than most people realize. So get comfortable, dim those lights, and let me take you on a gentle journey through the surprisingly rich mythology of the Griffin family and their bizarre little town. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Family Guy isn't just a collection of random cutaway gags and crude humor. Beneath all the chaos lies a carefully constructed universe with its own internal logic, recurring themes, and surprisingly deep character development that spans over 2 decades of storytelling. The show has created an entire ecosystem of characters, locations, and running narratives that interweave in ways that become apparent only when you step back and look at the bigger picture. Consider the Griffin family home itself. That modest 2-story house at 31 Spooner Street has witnessed countless adventures, but it's also a character in its own right. The house has its own history, its own secrets, and its own role in the family's story. We've seen glimpses of its past through various episodes, learning about previous owners and the strange events that have occurred within its walls. The basement has served as everything from a secret laboratory to a tornado shelter, while the attic holds forgotten memories and mysterious artifacts from the family's past. Peter Griffin, the family patriarch, represents something far more complex than the typical bumbling father figure. His character arc across hundreds of episodes reveals a man struggling with responsibility, identity, and his place in the world. His various jobs throughout the series aren't just random plot devices, they're explorations of the American, working-class experience. From his time at the toy factory, to his stint as a fisherman, from his brief career as a bodyguard, to his adventures in television production. Peter's employment history tells a story about economic uncertainty and the changing nature of work in modern America. The relationship between Peter and his father-in-law, Carter Pewterschmidt, opens up entire storylines about class, wealth, and family dynamics. Carter represents old money, established power, and traditional values, while Peter embodies working-class sensibilities and anti-establishment attitudes. Their ongoing conflict reflects broader cultural tensions about privilege, success, and what it means to be a man in contemporary society. The episodes focusing on their relationship often reveal deeper truths about both characters, showing us sides of Peter we rarely see, and humanizing Carter beyond his role as the wealthy antagonist. Lois Griffin's character development represents one of the show's most subtle long-term storytelling achievements. Initially presented as the patient, long-suffering wife, Lois has evolved into a complex character with her own ambitions, frustrations, and moral complexities. Her musical background, her brief career as a model, her struggles with motherhood, and her occasional dark turns all contribute to a character portrait that's far richer than it appears on the surface. The episodes that focus on Lois often explore themes of unfulfilled potential, the sacrifices women make for family, and the tension between personal desires and social expectations. The children of the Griffin family each represent different aspects of growing up in modern America. Meg's role as the family scapegoat initially seems cruel, but viewed through a longer lens, her character arc becomes a meditation on adolescence, social acceptance, and finding one's place in the world. Her various attempts to fit in, her brief moments of triumph, and her resilience in the face of constant rejection tell a story about teenage life that's both exaggerated and surprisingly authentic. The episodes where Meg finally stands up for herself or finds temporary happiness hit differently when you understand the full context of her journey. Chris Griffin's character explores themes of masculinity, creativity, and coming of age. His artistic talents, his awkward social interactions, and his relationship with his father create a narrative about growing up different in a world that values conformity. The episodes that focus on Chris often deal with sensitive topics like bullying, self-expression, and the pressure to live up to expectations. His friendship with Herbert, the elderly neighbor, creates uncomfortable comedy, but also touches on themes of loneliness and the generation gap. Then there's Stewie Griffin, perhaps the most complex character in the entire series. His evolution from would-be world conqueror to sophisticated intellectual represents one of the most significant character developments in animated television. Stewie's relationship with Brian, his adventures through time and space, and his gradual coming to terms with his own identity create storylines that are simultaneously hilarious and surprisingly moving. The episodes that focus on Stewie often push the boundaries of what's possible in the Family Guy universe, introducing science fiction elements, philosophical discussions, and emotional depth that contrasts sharply with the show's typical tone. Brian Griffin serves as the show's moral center and intellectual conscience, but he's also deeply flawed in ways that make him more human than many actual human characters. His struggles with alcoholism, his pretentious intellectual posturing, his complicated romantic relationships, and his role as the family's voice of reason create a character who's simultaneously admirable and infuriating. The episodes that explore Brian's background, his relationship with his own identity as a talking dog, and his place in human society often serve as vehicles for social commentary and philosophical exploration. The town of Quahog itself is a character worthy of deep exploration. This fictional Rhode Island community has its own ecosystem of recurring characters, local institutions, and cultural traditions. The Drunken Clam serves as more than just Peter's favorite bar. It's a gathering place where working-class philosophy gets hashed out over beer and conversation. Jerome, the bartender, represents stability and wisdom in a world of chaos. The regular patrons each have their own stories and perspectives that contribute to the show's exploration of community and belonging. Quahog's local government, represented by Mayor Adam West, creates storylines that satirize American politics while also celebrating the absurdity of civic life. Mayor West's bizarre policies, his strange obsessions, and his genuine care for his constituents create a character who's simultaneously incompetent and oddly effective. The episodes dealing with local politics often reveal truths about democracy, leadership, and the relationship between citizens and their government. The show's approach to religion and spirituality, primarily explored through the Griffin family's relationship with their local church and various religious figures, creates ongoing narratives about faith, morality, and community. These storylines often challenge both religious orthodoxy and secular assumptions, creating space for nuanced discussions about belief and practice in modern American life. Family Guy's use of cutaway gags isn't just random humor, it's a storytelling technique that allows the show to explore ideas and scenarios that wouldn't fit into the main narrative. These brief vignettes often comment on historical events, pop culture phenomena, and social issues in ways that are both entertaining and insightful. The cumulative effect of hundreds of these cutaways creates a comprehensive commentary on American culture and society. The show's relationship with popular culture goes beyond simple parody. The various celebrity appearances, pop culture references, and media satires create a running commentary on fame, entertainment, and the role of media in modern life. Episodes that focus on Peter's brief brush with celebrity or Brian's attempts at literary fame explore themes about success, authenticity, and the price of public recognition. The recurring characters in Family Guy's universe each contribute to the show's exploration of different aspects of American life. Glenn Quagmire represents unchecked masculinity and sexual liberation, but episodes that delve deeper into his character reveal a more complex individual struggling with his own demons and desires. Cleveland Brown's friendship with Peter and his eventual move to his own spin-off series created storylines about race, friendship, and community that the show handled with surprising sensitivity. The show's treatment of disability, primarily through the character of Joe Swanson, creates ongoing narratives about resilience, adaptation, and the challenges faced by people with disabilities in American society. Joe's character development over the series shows him as a fully realized individual whose disability is just one aspect of his identity, not its defining characteristic. Family Guy's exploration of family dynamics extends beyond the immediate Griffin household to include the extended family members who appear throughout the series. Peter's relationship with his father Mickey, Lois's complex feelings about her parents, and the various relatives who drift in and out of episodes create a broader picture of how families function, dysfunction, and evolve over time. The show's handling of death and mortality, from the controversial killing and resurrection of Brian to the various deaths of minor characters throughout the series, creates ongoing meditations on loss, grief, and the meaning of life. These episodes often reveal the deep emotional connections between characters that might not be apparent in more comedic episodes. The science fiction elements that creep into Family Guy through Stewie's inventions and time travel adventures create opportunities for the show to explore philosophical questions about destiny, free will, and the nature of reality. The episodes dealing with alternate timelines and parallel universes suggest that the Family Guy universe is far more complex and interconnected than it initially appears. The show's treatment of education, primarily through the various school episodes and Chris and Meg's academic experiences, creates commentary on the American educational system, social hierarchies among young people, and the challenges of growing up in contemporary society. These storylines often reveal the ways that institutional structures both support and fail young people. Family Guy's exploration of work and economic life through Peter's various jobs and the family's financial struggles creates ongoing commentary about class, opportunity, and the American dream. The episodes that focus on economic hardship often reveal the ways that financial stress affects family relationships and individual well-being. The show's approach to mental health, explored through various characters' psychological struggles and Brian's role as unofficial family therapist, creates space for discussions about depression, anxiety, and the importance of mental health care. These storylines often handle serious topics with both humor and genuine sensitivity. As we wrap up this journey through the hidden depths of Family Guy's universe, it's worth noting that this exploration only scratches the surface of the rich storytelling possibilities contained within this seemingly simple animated comedy. The show's ability to balance crude humor with genuine emotional depth, social commentary with pure entertainment, and chaos with carefully constructed narrative arcs makes it a unique achievement in television comedy. The next time you watch an episode of Family Guy, try looking beyond the surface humor to see the deeper stories being told. Notice how character relationships evolve over time, how running gags develop new meanings in different contexts, and how the show uses its absurdist elements to explore very real human experiences and social issues. Sweet dreams, and remember that sometimes the most profound truths are hidden in the most unexpected places, even in the chaotic world of Quahog, Rhode Island. Picture this. You're lying in bed, eyes heavy, but your mind is still racing from the day. You need something familiar, something comforting, but not too stimulating. What if I told you that the chaotic world of Quahog, Rhode Island might be exactly what your brain needs to drift off into peaceful sleep? Tonight, we're diving deep into the surprisingly rich and intricate lore of Family Guy, perfect for those who find comfort in familiar voices and storylines as they fall asleep. Before we begin this journey through the Griffin family universe, let me paint you a picture of why animated sitcom lore makes for perfect sleep content. There's something uniquely soothing about revisiting familiar characters and their predictable yet entertaining mishaps. The voices become like old friends, and the storylines, no matter how absurd, follow patterns our brains can easily process without requiring intense focus or emotional investment. Family Guy, created by Seth MacFarlane, first aired in 1999 and has since become a cultural phenomenon that spans over 2 decades. But beyond the cutaway gags and pop culture references lies a surprisingly deep well of character development, running jokes, and interconnected storylines that form the backbone of what we might call the Family Guy universe. Tonight, as we explore this lore together, let your mind wander through the streets of Quahog, meeting its eccentric residents and uncovering the hidden depths of this animated world. Let's start our sleepy journey with the Griffin family home at 31 Spooner Street. This isn't just any house, it's a character in its own right. The 2-story colonial has witnessed countless adventures, disasters, and heartwarming moments. From Peter's elaborate schemes gone wrong to Stewie's secret laboratory hidden away from prying eyes, every room tells a story. The living room, with its iconic green couch, has been the setting for family meetings, Lois's piano performances, and countless hours of television watching that mirror our own lazy evenings. Peter Griffin, the well-meaning but often misguided patriarch, works at the Pawtucket Patriot Brewery, a detail that runs much deeper than casual viewers might realize. His job isn't just a simple plot device. It's connected to a larger narrative about working-class American life and the struggles of maintaining employment while dealing with one's own impulsive nature. Peter's work relationships, particularly with his boss Mr. Weed and later Angela, reflect broader themes about authority, responsibility, and the challenges of adult life that many viewers can relate to as they wind down from their own workday. The character of Lois Griffin brings her own rich backstory to the family dynamic. Born into the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, her background creates an interesting tension throughout the series. Her piano skills aren't just a random character trait. They represent her cultured upbringing and artistic aspirations that sometimes clash with her current suburban mom reality. This internal conflict plays out subtly across episodes, creating layers of character development that reward longtime viewers who notice these recurring themes. Meg Griffin, often the target of the family's jokes, represents something more profound in the show's lore. Her struggles with identity, acceptance, and finding her place in both her family and high school social hierarchy mirror real teenage experiences. The running gag of her being ignored or dismissed actually serves a larger narrative purpose, highlighting how families sometimes overlook the quieter members while the louder personalities dominate attention. Chris Griffin's character development over the years has been fascinating to observe. His artistic talents, particularly his drawing abilities, aren't just random skills thrown in for plot convenience. They represent his creative outlet and unique way of processing the world around him. His relationship with his art teacher and various creative pursuits show a character who finds solace and identity through artistic expression, something that resonates with many viewers who have their own creative passions. Then we have Stewie Griffin, perhaps the most complex character in the Family Guy universe. His sophisticated vocabulary and advanced intelligence create an interesting paradox: a baby with the emotional needs of an infant, but the intellectual capacity of a genius. His relationship with Brian goes beyond simple friendship. It represents a connection between two characters who often feel misunderstood by the world around them. Their adventures together, from time travel to road trips, form some of the show's most emotionally resonant storylines. Brian Griffin serves as more than just the family pet. His role as the voice of reason, combined with his own flaws and struggles, makes him one of the most relatable characters. His writing aspirations, political views, and romantic relationships create a character who grapples with adult concerns while maintaining the loyalty and unconditional love associated with man's best friend. His college education and intellectual pretensions often clash with his dog nature, creating humor while also exploring themes of identity and belonging. The town of Quahog itself deserves recognition as a character in this lore. From the drunken clam bar where Peter and his friends gather, to the various local businesses and landmarks, the town creates a complete ecosystem for these characters to inhabit. The recurring locations aren't just backdrops. They're gathering places where relationships develop and community dynamics play out. Speaking of Peter's friends, The group consisting of Glenn Quagmire, Cleveland Brown, and Joe Swanson represents different aspects of suburban male friendship. Each brings their own backstory and personality quirks that have been developed over hundreds of episodes. Quagmire's pilot background and colorful, personal life, Cleveland's calm demeanor and family situation, and Joe's police work and disability all contribute to a rich tapestry of interconnected lives. The show's approach to continuity is particularly interesting for those seeking sleep-friendly content. While Family Guy is known for its non-sequential storytelling and frequent breaking of the fourth wall, there are actually numerous callback jokes, character developments, and ongoing storylines that reward careful attention. However, these elements never require intense focus to appreciate, making them perfect for those drifting off to sleep. One of the most compelling aspects of Family Guy lore is how it handles sensitive topics through its animated format. The show can explore complex social issues, family dynamics, and cultural commentary in ways that might be too intense in live-action format. This creates a safe space for viewers to process various themes without feeling overwhelmed, which is particularly beneficial for those seeking relaxing bedtime content. The musical elements of Family Guy deserve special mention in our exploration of comforting lore. From Lois's piano playing to the elaborate musical numbers that occasionally take center stage, music serves as a soothing element that connects episodes across seasons. These musical moments often provide emotional release or character development in ways that feel organic and satisfying. The show's relationship with pop culture creates another layer of familiarity for viewers. The constant references to movies, television shows, historical events, and celebrities create a shared cultural touchstone that makes the viewing experience feel like spending time with friends who share similar interests and memories. This cultural connectivity is particularly comforting for those seeking familiar content before sleep. As we dive deeper into the Griffin family dynamics, we discover patterns and relationships that develop over time. Peter and Lois's marriage, despite its comedic obstacles, represents a partnership that endures through various challenges. Their relationship demonstrates resilience, forgiveness, and the ability to find humor in difficult situations, themes that can be quite comforting for viewers reflecting on their own relationships. The sibling dynamics between Meg, Chris, and Stewie also evolve throughout the series. While often played for laughs, their interactions reveal genuine care for one another, even when that care is expressed in unconventional ways. These family bonds, however dysfunctional they may appear on the surface, ultimately represent the enduring nature of family connections. The extended family members who appear throughout the series add additional layers to the show's lore. From Lois's parents to Peter's father, these characters bring their own histories and perspectives that inform our understanding of the main characters. Their appearances often provide backstory that explains certain behaviors or attitudes, creating a more complete picture of the Griffin family's place in the world. The workplace dynamics at the Pawtucket Patriot Brewery offer another avenue for exploring character development and relationships. Peter's interactions with co-workers, his various workplace mishaps, and the company's role in the community all contribute to a broader understanding of how this animated world functions. These workplace stories often mirror real professional experiences while maintaining the show's comedic tone. The educational aspects of Family Guy, while often buried beneath layers of humor, provide interesting insights into various topics. Whether it's historical references, scientific concepts, or cultural information, the show often includes educational elements that can be intellectually stimulating without being overwhelming. This makes it ideal for viewers who want to learn something while relaxing. The show's treatment of holidays and special occasions creates recurring touchstones throughout its run. Christmas episodes, Halloween specials, and other holiday-themed shows establish traditions within the show's universe, while also connecting with viewers' own seasonal memories and experiences. These episodes often carry additional emotional weight and provide comfort through their familiarity and seasonal associations. The animation style itself contributes to the show's sleep-friendly qualities. The bright colors, simple character designs, and fluid movement create visual comfort that's easy on the eyes, especially for those watching in darker environments. The visual consistency across episodes provides a reliable aesthetic experience that doesn't jar viewers with sudden changes in style or tone. character catchphrases, and recurring jokes create a linguistic comfort zone for regular viewers. From Peter's "Nai-heh-heh" laugh to Stewie's "what the deuce," these verbal tics become as familiar as the voices of family members. This linguistic familiarity contributes to the show's effectiveness as background content for sleep preparation. The show's approach to storytelling, with its nonlinear structure and frequent tangents, actually mimics how our minds work when we're trying to fall asleep. Our thoughts often jump from topic to topic without strict logical progression, making Family Guy's storytelling style particularly compatible with the mental state we experience while drifting off. The voice acting deserves special recognition in our exploration of comforting lore. Seth MacFarlane's multiple character voices, along with the other talented voice actors, create distinct personalities that feel consistent and reliable across episodes. The familiarity of these voices becomes particularly soothing for regular viewers, much like how a parent's voice can comfort a child at bedtime. The show's exploration of friendship, particularly through Peter's group and Brian's various relationships, demonstrates the importance of social connections in navigating life's challenges. These friendship dynamics provide examples of loyalty, support, and shared experiences that many viewers find relatable and comforting. As our journey through Family Guy lore draws to a close, we can appreciate how this animated series has created a comprehensive world filled with memorable characters, recurring themes, and comforting familiarity. The show's blend of humor, heart, and humanity creates an atmosphere that can help ease the transition from the stress of daily life to the peace of sleep. Whether you're drawn to the family dynamics, the small-town setting, the workplace adventures, or simply the comfort of familiar voices, Family Guy offers a rich tapestry of storytelling that can accompany you on your journey to dreamland. So tonight, as you settle into your comfortable position and let these stories wash over you, remember that you're not just watching random episodes. You're visiting a complete universe filled with characters who have grown and developed over decades of storytelling. Let their adventures become the backdrop for your own journey into rest, knowing that in the world of Quahog, there's always another story waiting to unfold, another laugh to be shared, and another moment of comfort to be found in the familiar chaos of the Griffin family home. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with the gentle chaos of animated adventures and the warm comfort of characters who feel like old friends welcoming you home after a long day in the real world. You know those nights when you're scrolling endlessly through your phone, looking for something to help you drift off to sleep? Well, tonight we're diving into the chaotic world of Quahog with some absolutely wild Family Guy facts that'll either fascinate you into dreamland or keep you up all night thinking about how bizarre this show really is. Trust me, some of these will blow your mind. Let's start with something that sounds almost too crazy to be true. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice by Fox? Yeah, you heard that right. The show got the axe in 2002 after just 3 seasons. But here's where it gets interesting. The fans weren't having it. They launched massive campaigns, flooded Fox with letters, and basically refused to let their beloved dysfunctional Griffin family disappear forever. Adult Swim started airing reruns, and the DVD sales went through the roof. Fox executives looked at those numbers and thought, maybe we made a mistake. So they brought it back in 2005. Only to cancel it again in 2012. But once again, fan outcry was so intense that the network reversed their decision within weeks. Talk about people power. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the show's wild behind-the-scenes stories. The character of Peter Griffin was originally supposed to be much different. Creator Seth MacFarlane based Peter's voice on a security guard he knew, but he also drew inspiration from the classic cartoon character Popeye. If you listen carefully, you can hear those gruff, mumbly speech patterns that make Peter so distinctively annoying and lovable at the same time. Speaking of voices, here's something that might keep you up thinking about it. Seth MacFarlane voices not just Peter, but also Brian, Stewie, Glenn Quagmire, and Tom Tucker. The man is basically having conversations with himself for half the show. Imagine the recording sessions where he's literally arguing with himself in different voices. It's like the ultimate one-man show, except it's happening in a professional recording studio with millions of people watching. Now let's talk about some of the more bizarre facts that really showcase how unpredictable this show can be. Remember Ernie the Giant Chicken? That massive yellow bird who gets into those epic, destructive fights with Peter? Well, those fight scenes weren't just random comedy bits. They were actually Seth MacFarlane's way of paying homage to classic action movies and anime fight sequences. Each battle is choreographed like a legitimate action scene, complete with dramatic music, slow-motion moments, and enough property damage to bankrupt a small city. The first chicken fight lasted over 3 minutes, which in animation terms is basically a feature film. Here's something that'll make you think differently about the show's timeline. Family Guy exists in this weird temporal bubble where nobody really ages, but the show constantly references current events. The Griffin kids have been teenagers and babies for over 20 years, yet the show has covered everything from early 2000s pop culture to current social media trends. It's like they're stuck in some kind of cartoon time warp where only the references to the outside world change. The show's approach to controversial topics is another fascinating aspect. Seth MacFarlane has always used Family Guy as a platform to push boundaries and challenge social norms, but he's also incredibly strategic about it. Many of the most shocking moments are actually carefully crafted to spark discussion, rather than just offend for the sake of it. The writers spend considerable time debating which lines to cross and which ones to respect, even though the end result might seem completely chaotic. Let's dive into some character-specific facts that reveal just how much thought goes into this seemingly random show. Stewie's British accent has never been officially explained within the show's universe. Seth MacFarlane gave him that posh, sophisticated voice partly as a joke about how American audiences often perceive British accents as more intelligent, but also because it creates this hilarious contrast with his baby appearance and diabolical personality. The accent has become so iconic that fans can instantly recognize Stewie just from hearing a single word. Brian the dog represents something unique in animation history. He's essentially the show's conscience, the character who often voices the writer's more serious opinions about politics and social issues. But here's the kicker. He's also deeply flawed and hypocritical, which makes him more realistic than many human characters on television. His struggles with alcoholism, his pretentious intellectualism, and his unrequited love for Lois create this complex personality that shouldn't work in a cartoon dog, but somehow does perfectly. The show's relationship with censorship is absolutely wild. While Family Guy gets away with an incredible amount of controversial content, there are still things that get cut or altered. The writers have developed this elaborate game with network censors, sometimes including deliberately outrageous content that they expect to be removed, just so they can keep the stuff they really want. It's like a negotiation tactic disguised as comedy writing. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's production process. Each episode takes approximately 10 months to complete from initial concept to final broadcast. That means the writers are constantly juggling multiple episodes at different stages of production. They might be recording voices for one episode while editing animation for another and brainstorming ideas for a third. It's this incredibly complex timeline that allows them to stay current with pop culture references while maintaining consistent character development. The merchandising aspect of Family Guy reveals some interesting insights into fan behavior. Stewie, Griffin merchandise consistently outsells products featuring any other character, including Peter. There's something about that evil baby that resonates with audiences in ways that even surprise the show's creators. Maybe it's his quotability, his distinctive design, or just the absurdity of a homicidal infant, but fans can't get enough of Stewie-themed products. Let's talk about some of the more obscure references that hardcore fans love to discover. The show is packed with callbacks to obscure 1980 seconds movies, forgotten television commercials, and incredibly specific cultural moments that most viewers won't catch on first viewing. The writers take pride in creating these layers of humor that reward careful attention and repeat watching. Some jokes are designed to be funny on the surface level, while others require extensive pop culture knowledge to fully appreciate. The show's approach to holiday episodes is particularly interesting. Instead of creating heartwarming, family-friendly specials, Family Guy consistently subverts holiday traditions and expectations. Their Christmas episodes often feature apocalyptic scenarios, their Halloween content pushes horror boundaries, and even their Thanksgiving episodes manage to be simultaneously touching and deeply disturbing. It's like they've made it their mission to corrupt every major holiday. Voice acting for Family Guy involves some surprisingly physical performances. Seth MacFarlane often moves around dramatically while recording, especially for Peter's voice, because the character's speech patterns require specific breathing techniques and physical positioning. The other voice actors have picked up similar habits, leading to recording sessions that look more like interpretive dance than traditional voice work. The show's international versions reveal fascinating cultural differences. In some countries, certain episodes are completely banned, while others require extensive editing or dubbing changes that alter entire joke structures. The German version, for example, has to navigate completely different censorship standards, leading to creative workarounds that sometimes make the international versions funnier than the originals. Here's something that connects to the show's longevity. Family Guy has survived multiple major changes in television viewing habits. It started during the era of appointment television, adapted to the DVR age, thrived during the streaming revolution, and now exists in the world of on-demand binge-watching culture. Each transition has required subtle adjustments to pacing, storytelling, and even joke structures to match how audiences consume content. The show's relationship with its own continuity is deliberately chaotic. While some animated series maintain strict continuity, Family Guy treats its own history as more of a suggestion than a rule. Characters die and come back. Major events get forgotten or contradicted, and timeline inconsistencies are often acknowledged with jokes rather than explanations. This approach gives the writers incredible freedom, but also creates this surreal viewing experience where anything could happen at any time. Celebrity guest appearances on Family Guy often involve more work than you might expect. Many famous people who lend their voices to the show also help develop their characters' personality and dialogue. Some celebrities have even pitched entire storylines or specific jokes that ended up in episodes. It's become this collaborative process where guest stars are genuinely involved in the creative process, rather than just showing up to read predetermined lines. The show's animation style has evolved significantly over the years, but the changes are so gradual that most viewers don't notice them. Early episodes have a rougher, more hand-drawn quality, while recent episodes feature incredibly smooth computer-assisted animation. The character designs have also subtly shifted, with faces becoming more expressive and movements becoming more fluid. It's like watching the entire animation industry evolve through one show's progression. Family Guy's approach to social media and internet culture is particularly fascinating. The show has managed to stay relevant across multiple digital revolutions by constantly adapting its humor to current online trends. But instead of just making surface-level references to viral videos or memes, the writers dig deeper into how internet culture affects human behavior and social interactions. They're essentially providing commentary on how we've all changed as people due to digital connectivity. The show's musical numbers deserve special recognition for their complexity and production value. These aren't just throwaway jokes. They're fully orchestrated, professionally performed pieces that often parody specific musical genres or famous songs. Seth MacFarlane's background in musical theater influences these sequences, resulting in surprisingly sophisticated compositions that could stand alone as legitimate musical entertainment. Here's something that really shows the show's attention to detail. The background characters in Quahog have their own consistent personalities and storylines that play out across multiple episodes. If you pay attention, you'll notice recurring extras who have their own character arcs happening in the background, while the main characters deal with their primary storylines. It creates this sense of a living, breathing community rather than just a backdrop for the Griffin family's adventures. The show's handling of controversial real-world events demonstrates a careful balance between comedy and sensitivity. While Family Guy is known for pushing boundaries, the writers actually spend considerable time discussing how to address serious topics without completely undermining their impact. Sometimes they decide certain events are too sensitive to joke about immediately, waiting months or even years before finding the right comedic angle. And here's something that brings us full circle to why Family Guy works so well as bedtime entertainment. Despite all its chaos and controversy, there's something oddly comforting about the show's consistency. No matter how crazy the world gets, you can count on the Griffin family to be dealing with their own ridiculous problems in their own ridiculous ways. It's like a reliable friend who always has a completely absurd story to distract you from whatever's keeping you awake. So there you have it. 20 years of Family Guy condensed into the kind of random facts that either help you drift off to sleep or give you something interesting to think about as you lie there in the dark. Sweet dreams. And remember, if you can't sleep, at least you're not dealing with a giant chicken trying to destroy your entire neighborhood over an expired coupon. You know that feeling when you're trying to fall asleep but your brain just won't shut up? Well, tonight we're gonna fix that with some of the most random, weirdly fascinating Family Guy facts that'll have you drifting off to dreamland while learning bizarre trivia about America's most chaotic animated family. So get comfortable, dim those lights, and let me take you on a gentle journey through the strange world of Quahog. Let's start with something that might surprise you. The show's creator Seth MacFarlane almost missed his flight on September 11, 2001. He was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11, one of the planes that hit the World Trade Center. But he arrived at the airport just 10 minutes late and missed the boarding. Sometimes, being late really does save your life. This near-miss experience actually influenced some of the show's later episodes, though MacFarlane rarely talks about it publicly. Speaking of Seth MacFarlane, did you know he voices 4 of the main characters? Peter, Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire are all brought to life by the same person. That's pretty impressive when you think about how different each character sounds. MacFarlane developed Peter's voice by imitating a security guard he knew, while Brian's sophisticated tone was inspired by old Hollywood actors. Stewie's accent, meanwhile, was based on Rex Harrison's performance in My Fair Lady. Here's something that might help you sleep better knowing it exists. There's an entire episode that was banned from television for years. The episode, called Partial Terms of Endearment, dealt with some pretty controversial topics and wasn't aired on Fox until much later. It eventually found its way to DVD releases, but for the longest time, fans had no idea this episode even existed. Sometimes, the most interesting content is the stuff we never get to see. Family Guy has this weird relationship with cancellation that's almost like a bedtime story in itself. The show was canceled, not once, but twice. First in 2002, then again in 2003. But here's where it gets interesting. DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim were so successful that Fox brought it back in 2005. It's like the show kept falling asleep and waking up stronger each time. The fans literally saved it through their dedication, which is pretty heartwarming when you think about it. Let me tell you about some of the guest stars who've appeared on the show that you might not have realized. Patrick Stewart, the distinguished Captain Picard himself, has voiced multiple characters including Susie's arch-nemesis. Rush Limbaugh appeared as himself, and even Phyllis Diller lent her voice to Peter's mother-in-law. The show has attracted everyone from political figures to rock stars, creating this weird mix of high culture and lowbrow humor. There's something oddly soothing about the show's animation process, too. Each episode takes about 8 months to complete from script to screen. The writers spend weeks crafting jokes, the voice actors record their lines multiple times to get the perfect delivery, and then teams of animators bring everything to life frame by frame. It's like watching a very slow, very detailed dream come together. The famous chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken started as a throwaway gag, but became one of the show's most beloved running jokes. These elaborate, destruction-filled battles were inspired by old action movies and Jackie Chan films. The animators love creating these sequences because they get to go completely over the top with the destruction and mayhem. There's something almost meditative about watching these absurdly long fight scenes unfold. Here's a fact that connects to real life in an unexpected way. The character of Mayor Adam West was named after the actor who played Batman in the 1960 Seconds TV series. When the real Adam West heard about this, he was so delighted that he agreed to voice the character himself. He continued playing the role until his death in 2017, bringing his own quirky charm to the already eccentric animated mayor of Quahog. The show's musical numbers are surprisingly complex productions. When they create songs like Surfin' Bird or any of their elaborate Broadway-style numbers, they work with professional musicians and composers. Seth MacFarlane, being a trained singer himself, often performs these songs live in recording sessions. The musical episodes require months of additional work, but they've become some of the most memorable moments in the series. Cleveland's spin-off show, The Cleveland Show, ran for 4 seasons and had its own unique animation style that was slightly more polished than the original Family Guy. When Cleveland returned to Family Guy, the animators had to readjust his character design to match the original show's style. It's like he went away, got a makeover, and had to tone it down when he came back home. The show's pop culture references are researched extensively by a team of writers who specialize in different decades and cultural phenomena. They maintain databases of movie quotes, TV show references, and historical events to ensure their parodies are accurate enough to be funny, but absurd enough to avoid copyright issues. Sometimes they spend weeks perfecting a single throwaway reference that appears for just a few seconds. Stewie's sexuality has been a running mystery throughout the series, with writers deliberately keeping it ambiguous. Seth MacFarlane has mentioned in interviews that Stewie's character is meant to be fluid and open to interpretation. This ambiguity has led to countless fan theories and discussions, making Stewie one of the most analyzed characters in animated television. The Griffin house interior has been redesigned multiple times throughout the series, but the exterior has remained remarkably consistent. The house is supposedly located on Spooner Street in Quahog, Rhode Island, and the address is 31 Spooner Street. Fans have actually tried to locate this address in real Rhode Island towns, though of course it doesn't exist. Voice actress Alex Borstein, who plays Lois, originally auditioned for a completely different role. She was supposed to voice a minor character, but when they heard her natural speaking voice, they immediately knew she was perfect for Lois. Borstein has mentioned that she sometimes forgets to use Lois's voice in real life and accidentally slips into character during casual conversations. The show's writer's room operates like a comedy laboratory, where jokes are tested, refined, and sometimes completely scrapped. They have a policy where any writer can suggest changes to any joke, no matter how senior or junior they are. This collaborative approach has led to some of the show's most unexpected and brilliant moments. But it also means that some episodes go through dozens of script revisions. Brian's character was almost completely different in the original concept. He was supposed to be a regular dog who couldn't talk, but MacFarlane decided that having an intellectual talking dog would create better story opportunities. This decision fundamentally changed the show's dynamic and gave them a character who could serve as both comic relief and philosophical commentary. The infamous Conway Twitty segments, where the show would cut to footage of the real country singer performing entire songs, were actually created as time fillers when episodes ran short. These segments became so popular with fans that the writers started including them intentionally, turning what was essentially animated dead air into a beloved recurring gag. Quagmire's character was inspired by radio DJs from the 1950 seconds and 1960 seconds who had that smooth, slightly sleazy on-air personality. Seth MacFarlane studied old radio shows and interviews to develop Quagmire's distinctive speaking style and his catchphrase, "giggity giggity." The character's appearance was based on classic cartoon characters, but with a modern twist that made him both nostalgic and contemporary. The show's relationship with censorship is fascinating. The writers often create jokes specifically designed to test the boundaries of what they can get away with on television. They'll write multiple versions of controversial scenes, knowing that some will be cut but hoping that the milder versions will make it to air. It's like an ongoing negotiation with the censors through comedy. Family Guy was one of the first animated shows to embrace internet culture and memes before most people knew what memes were. The writers were early adopters of online humor and would incorporate internet jokes into episodes months before they became mainstream. This forward-thinking approach helped keep the show relevant to younger audiences who were spending more time online. The character of Herbert the Pervert was originally supposed to appear in just one episode, but his distinctive voice and creepy personality made him an unexpected fan favorite. The voice actor Alex Borstein came up with Herbert's characteristic whistle and speech pattern on the spot during recording, and it became such an integral part of the character that they couldn't imagine him any other way. Did you know that several Family Guy episodes have been turned into actual comic books? These comics expand on storylines from the show and sometimes feature adventures that would be too expensive to animate. The comic book format allows the writers to explore more complex storylines and include visual gags that might not work as well in animation. The show's approach to celebrity deaths is uniquely irreverent. When famous people pass away, the writers often create memorial segments that are simultaneously respectful and absurd. They've developed a reputation for handling these situations with a mix of genuine tribute and satirical commentary that somehow works better than it should. Joe Swanson's character was created specifically to address representation of disabled characters in animation, but the writers were careful not to make his disability the only thing that defines him. They wanted to show that wheelchair users could be action heroes, fathers, and complex characters with their own storylines and personality quirks that had nothing to do with their physical limitations. The show's animation studio has created detailed model sheets for background characters who appear for just a few seconds. They believe that consistency in character design, even for minor roles, helps create a more believable world. Some of these background characters have their own names and backstories that never make it into episodes, but help the animators understand their roles in Quahog's community. Family Guy's impact on internet culture extends beyond just memes and references. The show pioneered the use of cutaway gags, which became a template for online content creators who needed to create short, punchy comedy segments. Many YouTube comedians cite Family Guy's editing style as an influence on their own work. The series has been translated into dozens of languages, and each version faces unique challenges in adapting American cultural references for international audiences. In some countries, entire storylines have been changed to make them more culturally relevant, while maintaining the show's essential humor and character dynamics. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that Family Guy represents something uniquely American about comedy: the ability to find humor in absolutely everything, from the mundane details of suburban life to the biggest questions about existence and meaning. The show's creators understood that laughter can be found anywhere if you're willing to look for it, and sometimes the most random, unexpected moments become the ones we remember most fondly. Sweet dreams, and may your own family adventures be slightly less chaotic than the Griffins. Picture this: you're settling in for a cozy night, getting ready to drift off into dreamland, but instead of counting sheep, how about we count some truly wild facts about one of television's most unpredictable animated families? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and surprisingly intricate world of Family Guy, and trust me, by the end of this journey, you'll have enough random trivia rattling around in your brain to either help you fall asleep or keep you up all night wondering how Seth MacFarlane's mind works. Let's start with something that might surprise you about the show's origins. Family Guy almost never existed in the form we know today. Back in the late 90s, Seth MacFarlane was working at Hanna-Barbera, the legendary animation studio behind classics like The Flintstones and The Jetsons. He created a short film called The Life of Larry for his thesis project at the Rhode Island School of Design, which featured many of the characters who would eventually become the Griffin family. The short was so impressive that it caught the attention of Fox executives. But here's where it gets interesting. MacFarlane was only 24 years old when he pitched the show, making him one of the youngest creators in television history to get a primetime animated series greenlit. The original concept was quite different from what we see today. Peter Griffin was initially going to be much more of a traditional sitcom dad. Think more like Homer Simpson, but without the yellow skin. The character's personality evolved significantly during the development process, becoming the lovably obnoxious and often controversial figure we know now. MacFarlane has mentioned in interviews that he drew inspiration from his own father's mannerisms and speech patterns, particularly the distinctive Rhode Island accent that Peter sports throughout the series. Here's a fact that might make you appreciate the show's complexity a bit more surface. The average Family Guy episode contains over 300 individual drawings. Each 22-minute episode requires thousands of hours of work from dozens of artists, animators, and voice actors. The animation process alone takes approximately 8 months from initial script to final product, which explains why the show's production schedule is so carefully planned out years in advance. Speaking of voice acting, Seth MacFarlane performs the voices of 4 main characters: Peter, Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. But here's something that might blow your mind. He records all of their dialogue separately, often having conversations with himself that last for hours. MacFarlane has described the experience as somewhat surreal, especially when he's voicing emotional scenes between characters like Brian and Stewie, who have some of the most complex relationships on the show. The character of Stewie Griffin deserves special attention because his development represents one of the most dramatic character evolution arcs in animated television history. Originally conceived as a straightforward villain baby bent on world domination and matricide, Stewie gradually transformed into a more nuanced character, exploring themes of sexuality, intelligence, and family dynamics. The shift was so gradual that many viewers didn't notice it happening over the course of several seasons. McFarlane has stated that this evolution was intentional, reflecting his own growth as a writer and his desire to explore more sophisticated storytelling within the animated comedy format. One of the most fascinating aspects of Family Guy's production involves their approach to cutaway gags, those random tangential moments that have become the show's signature. The writers maintain what they call a gag bank, which is essentially a massive database of potential cutaway ideas that they can draw from when constructing episodes. Some of these gags were written years before they actually appeared on screen, waiting for the right episode and context to make them work. The process of selecting which gags make it into episodes involves multiple rounds of testing and refinement, with the writers constantly evaluating whether a particular joke will land with audiences or fall flat. The show's relationship with controversy has been both a blessing and a curse throughout its run. Family Guy has been canceled twice by Fox, first in 2002 after 3 seasons, and then brought back in 2005 due to strong DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim. The second cancellation never actually happened, but the show came close several times due to various controversies and ratings fluctuations. What's interesting is that many of the episodes that generated the most controversy also ended up being some of the most popular, suggesting that the show's willingness to push boundaries is intrinsically linked to its success. The voice acting ensemble deserves recognition for their incredible consistency and chemistry. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois, actually auditioned for the role while she was performing in the sketch comedy group MAD-TV. Her distinctive voice for Lois was inspired by her own grandmother, and she's mentioned that she sometimes forgets she's not using her natural speaking voice when recording Lois scenes. Mila Kunis, who voices Meg, was only 14 years old when she started on the show, making her one of the youngest voice actors to land a major role in prime-time animation. The show's musical elements often go unnoticed, but they represent a significant portion of the production effort. Family Guy features more original music than most animated series, with McFarlane himself composing many of the songs and musical numbers. His background in musical theater strongly influences these segments, and many episodes feature elaborate musical sequences that require additional voice actors, musicians, and extended animation sequences. The episode Road to the Multiverse alone featured over 40 different animation styles and required nearly double the typical production time. Here's something that might surprise fans of the show's seemingly random humor. Family Guy episodes are actually meticulously structured according to classical comedy writing principles. Each episode follows a 3-act structure with carefully planned pacing and timing. The cutaway gags aren't randomly inserted. They're strategically placed to provide relief from main plot tension or to enhance particular jokes. The writers spend considerable time in the editing process, adjusting the timing of these elements to maximize comedic impact. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond television. Family Guy has spawned countless internet memes, influenced other animated series, and even affected the way people communicate online. Phrases like, "Oh my God, who the hell cares?" and "What the deuce?" have entered common usage, and the show's irreverent style has influenced everything from advertising to political commentary. The series has also been credited with helping to revive interest in animated comedy among adult audiences, paving the way for shows like Rick and Morty and BoJack Horseman. One of the most technically impressive aspects of Family Guy involves their approach to celebrity impressions and guest voices. The show has featured hundreds of celebrity guest stars over the years, but what's remarkable is how they integrate these appearances into the show's established comic rhythm. Many celebrities have mentioned that recording for Family Guy requires a different approach than traditional voice acting because the timing and delivery style is so specific to the show's aesthetic. The international versions of Family Guy present fascinating variations on the original concept. In different countries, certain cultural references are modified or replaced entirely to make sense to local audiences. The German version, for example, includes completely different cutaway gags that reference German culture and history. These adaptations require not just translation but complete rewriting of significant portions of episodes, essentially creating parallel versions of the same show. Behind the scenes, the Family Guy writing room operates more like a comedy club than a traditional television writing environment. Writers regularly perform their ideas for each other, and the collaborative process involves a lot of improvisation and spontaneous joke development. MacFarlane has described the experience as one of the most creatively fulfilling aspects of producing the show, and many writers who have worked on Family Guy have gone on to create their own successful comedy series. The show's approach to social commentary often flies under the radar because it's wrapped in such outrageous humor. Many episodes tackle serious subjects like politics, religion, and social justice, but they do so through such an absurdist lens that the commentary becomes almost subliminal. This technique allows the show to address controversial topics while maintaining its primarily comedic focus, though it also means that viewers can interpret the show's messages in wildly different ways. Family Guy's influence on animation technology shouldn't be overlooked either. The show was among the first animated series to extensively use digital animation techniques, and their production pipeline has been studied and emulated by animation studios worldwide. The efficiency of their animation process allows them to produce episodes more quickly than many competing shows, which is part of why they've been able to maintain such a consistent release schedule for so many years. The merchandising empire surrounding Family Guy represents another fascinating aspect of the show's cultural impact. From action figures to clothing lines to video games, the show has spawned a massive array of consumer products. What's interesting is how these products often feature jokes and dusky references that only hardcore fans would understand, creating multiple tiers of engagement with the show's content. The show's relationship with censorship provides insight into how television content standards have evolved over the past 2 decades. Early episodes of Family Guy pushed boundaries that were considered quite shocking at the time, but many of those same jokes would barely register as controversial today. The series has served as a kind of barometer for changing social attitudes about humor, language, and acceptable content on television. Looking at Family Guy's longevity, it's remarkable that a show built around such seemingly random humor has maintained relevance for over 2 decades. Part of this success stems from the flexibility of the format, in the end, because the show isn't tied to realistic character development or consistent continuity. It can adapt to changing cultural contexts much more easily than traditional sitcoms. Characters can be completely different from episode to episode without breaking the show's internal logic. The voice recording process for Family Guy involves some unique challenges that most animated shows don't face. Because so many characters are voiced by the same actors, recording sessions often require complex scheduling to allow for quick character switches. MacFarlane, in particular, has developed techniques for rapidly shifting between his different character voices, sometimes switching between Peter and Brian mid-sentence during recording sessions. Family Guy's impact on comedy writing extends beyond animation, into live-action television and film. Many comedy writers cite the show's fearless approach to offensive humor and its willingness to commit fully to absurd premises as influential in their own work. The show's success proved that audiences were hungry for comedy that didn't follow traditional rules about likability or moral messaging. The technical aspects of producing Family Guy's signature visual style involve more complexity than might be immediately apparent. The seemingly simple character designs actually require precise consistency across hundreds of artists working on each episode. The show maintains detailed style guides that specify everything from the exact curve of Peter's chin to the precise shade of Brian's fur, ensuring visual continuity across different animation teams and production facilities. As we wind down this journey through the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy, it's worth noting that the show continues to evolve and surprise audiences after more than 20 years on the air. Whether you love it or hate it, there's no denying that Family Guy has carved out a unique place in television history, pushing boundaries and challenging expectations in ways that few shows ever attempt. So, there you have it, a deep dive into the bizarre, brilliant, and sometimes bewildering universe of Family Guy. From its humble beginnings as a college thesis project to its status as one of the longest-running animated series in television history, the show represents a fascinating case study in how unconventional creativity can find mainstream success. Sweet dreams. And remember, in the world of Family Guy, literally anything can happen, and usually does. Hey there, night owls and Family Guy fanatics. If you're settling in for some late-night entertainment and your brain is ready to drift off into dreamland, I've got the perfect collection of wild Family Guy facts that'll either help you doze off peacefully or keep you wide awake wondering how this show even exists. Tonight we're diving deep into the bizarre, chaotic, and absolutely insane world of everyone's favorite dysfunctional animated family. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind right off the bat. Did you know that Peter Griffin has an astronomical body count that would make serial killers jealous? We're talking thousands of deaths, and honestly, most of them happened in the most ridiculous ways possible. This isn't your typical cartoon violence where characters bounce back with cartoon physics. Peter has legitimately caused more destruction than some natural disasters. Speaking of Peter's mayhem, his very first kill happened way back in the second episode of the entire series. Remember that Roadrunner from Looney Tunes? Yeah, Peter straight up ran that bird down with his car, flattening it completely. What makes this even funnier is Peter's reaction afterward, casually asking if he hit an ostrich while the Roadrunner is clearly pancaked on his windshield. This moment basically set the tone for everything that would follow in the series. But here's where things get really wild. Peter once literally took over Death's job in the show, and with that cosmic responsibility came the power to kill people just by touching them. During his stint as the Grim Reaper, he accidentally killed 2 airplane pilots mid-flight simply because he forgot to wear mittens. Can you imagine being a passenger on that plane? Thankfully, actress Karen Black was somehow there to land the aircraft, or everyone would have died in that crash too. The hospital incidents are particularly disturbing when you think about them. Peter somehow convinced people to let him work as a doctor, which is terrifying enough on its own, but then he actually killed a patient during what should have been a routine procedure. The patient even thanked Peter for saving his life right before dying, which adds this darkly comedic layer that only Family Guy could pull off. Here's a fact that might help you sleep better or give you nightmares, depending on your perspective. Peter once worked as a babysitter and literally left a baby to drown in a bathtub. He casually walked away, leaving behind drain cleaner in case of clogs, soap next to a radio, and towels on the roof. The complete negligence and absurdity of this situation perfectly captures Peter's character. He's simultaneously well-meaning and catastrophically incompetent. The show took Peter's violence to cinematic levels during various parody episodes. When they did their Kill Bill homage, Peter went full samurai warrior mode, engaging in what can only be described as a sword-fighting bloodbath. The choreography was surprisingly well animated for a show that usually relies on simple character movements, and Peter managed to take down 15 opponents all by himself in pure martial arts mayhem. Then there's Peter's brief career as a superhero parody called Red Stool, which was obviously their take on Deadpool. The name comes from the fact that his cancer specifically affected his rear end, because of course Family Guy would go there. As Red Stool, Peter maintained Deadpool's tendency for extreme violence, adding several more bodies to his ever-growing count while cracking inappropriate jokes the entire time. The Walter White parody deserves special mention because it perfectly captured the essence of Breaking Bad while maintaining Family Guy's signature chaos. Peter as Heisenberg was just as dangerous as the original, dropping bodies left and right while somehow making it comedically absurd rather than genuinely threatening. The transformation from bumbling father to calculating criminal mastermind was surprisingly well executed for a show known more for cutaway gags than character development. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Peter's violence is how it affects his own family. He once accidentally killed his entire family through carbon monoxide poisoning, and his reaction was essentially wondering if his day's work was worth it. Sure, they all came back in the next episode because cartoon logic, but the casual way Peter processes causing his loved ones' deaths is genuinely unsettling when you think about it too deeply. The fight scenes with Ernie the Giant Chicken are legendary among Family Guy fans, and for good reason. These battles have spanned multiple episodes and caused more collateral damage than most action movies. They've fought in airports, construction sites, moving trains, and even hijacked time machines to battle across different historical periods. The destruction they cause is absolutely massive, with buildings collapsing, vehicles exploding, and innocent bystanders getting caught in their ridiculous feud. What makes the chicken fights even more absurd is that they started over an expired coupon. Think about that for a moment. These two characters have caused thousands of deaths, millions of dollars in property damage, and untold chaos across multiple dimensions, all because of a disagreement about a coupon's validity. It's the perfect example of Family Guy's ability to take tiny conflicts and escalate them to world-ending proportions. The time travel elements in their fights add another layer of complexity and destruction. When Peter and Ernie crash through different time periods, they're not just affecting the present day, they're literally altering history itself. The poor driver of that futuristic train they destroyed was probably just trying to get to work in his cyberpunk timeline. And suddenly, he's vaporized because two idiots from the early 21st century decided to continue their grocery store dispute across the space-time continuum. Here's something that might surprise you. Peter has actually caused more deaths through his various acts of terrorism, albeit usually accidental ones. When he befriended a terrorist named Mahmoud, Peter was completely oblivious to what was happening. All he cared about was the attention and perks of his new friendship. When Mahmoud gave him what Peter thought was a phone, he kept trying to use it to make calls, not realizing it was actually a bomb detonator. The explosions that resulted from Peter's innocent phone calls were catastrophic. Each time he tried to dial Mahmoud, another building would explode somewhere in the city. The fact that Peter remained completely clueless about what was happening makes it both hilarious and terrifying. Even when the gang managed to stop Mahmoud's planned attack on a bridge, Peter still had that detonator and used it again while trying to call a restaurant for reservations. The crossover episode with The Simpsons showcased Peter's destructive capabilities on an even grander scale. His fight with Homer Simpson leveled entire city blocks and resulted in mass casualties that would normally be associated with natural disasters or military conflicts. The two fathers' brawl started over Peter insulting The Simpsons show, which escalated into a city-destroying conflict that somehow ended with both characters gaining superpowers from radioactive waste. One particularly disturbing sequence involved Peter's brief stint as a high school student, where he arranged for a school shooting to get revenge on popular kids who ignored him. Even though he called it off at the last minute, the attack still went through, and the screams and gunshots in the background suggest multiple casualties among innocent children. This episode aired during a time when such events were unfortunately becoming more common in real life, making Peter's involvement even more unsettling. Peter's various explosions of hospitals deserve special mention for their sheer scale of destruction. When he disagreed with vaccines, he dressed as the Joker and blew up an entire medical facility just to prevent Stewie from getting a shot. The explosion was massive enough to level the building and likely killed dozens of patients, doctors, nurses, and staff members who were just trying to provide health care. But he didn't stop there. Peter later destroyed a children's hospital in another equally senseless act of destruction. The casual way the show presents these incidents, with Peter treating the explosions like minor inconveniences rather than mass casualty events, perfectly captures the dark comedy that Family Guy specializes in. It's simultaneously hilarious and deeply disturbing. The missile incidents showcase Peter's ability to cause destruction on a military scale. During his fight with President Trump, Peter's head got slammed onto a big red button that launched multiple missiles. Each missile likely killed hundreds of people in massive explosions, turning what started as a personal dispute into an international incident with catastrophic consequences. What's particularly interesting about Peter's character is how the show manages to make him sympathetic despite his astronomical body count. He's never intentionally malicious. He's just incredibly stupid and impulsive with access to dangerous situations. This combination makes him simultaneously lovable and terrifying, which is probably why the character has remained popular for over 2 decades. The physics of Peter's destruction often defy logic, even by cartoon standards. When he and Ernie crashed that Ferris wheel, it rolled through the city like a massive wheel of death, flattening everything in its path. The scale of destruction was apocalyptic, but it was presented with such absurd cartoon logic that viewers could laugh at it rather than being horrified by the implications. Peter's various career changes always seem to result in multiple casualties. Whether he's working as a doctor, babysitter, death himself, or any other profession, people end up dying as a direct result of his incompetence. It's actually impressive how consistently dangerous he is across all walks of life. There's literally no job safe enough for Peter Griffin to perform without causing fatalities. The show's commitment to continuity regarding Peter's violence is surprisingly strong for a series that usually ignores consequences. Characters who die in one episode rarely come back, unless there's a specific plot reason, and the destruction Peter causes often gets referenced in later episodes. This attention to detail makes his actions feel more impactful than typical cartoon violence. Here's a fun sleeping fact. The total estimated death toll directly caused by Peter Griffin throughout the series is approaching 3,000 people. That number includes direct kills, collateral damage from his fights, explosions he's caused, and various accidents resulting from his stupidity. To put that in perspective, Peter has personally caused more deaths than many historical disasters. The international incidents Peter has triggered would realistically make him one of the most wanted criminals on the planet. He's blown up bridges, destroyed government buildings, launched military missiles, and caused diplomatic crises with multiple countries. Yet somehow he continues living his normal suburban life without any legal consequences, which is perhaps the most unrealistic aspect of a show featuring a talking baby and a martini-drinking dog. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the Family Guy universe, Peter Griffin is probably causing another catastrophe that will add to his ever-growing body count. Sweet dreams, and maybe avoid any neighborhoods where middle-aged men are having disputes with large poultry. In the world of Family Guy, such conflicts have a tendency to escalate into city-leveling disasters that make natural catastrophes look like minor inconveniences. The beautiful absurdity of Peter's character is that despite being responsible for more destruction than most fictional supervillains, he's still somehow the protagonist we're supposed to root for. That's the magic of Family Guy, taking the most inappropriate situations and making them laugh out loud funny through sheer audacity and perfect comedic timing. Now close your eyes and let these wonderfully bizarre facts carry you off into dreamland, where hopefully giant chickens and expired coupons can't hurt you. Picture this. You're scrolling through endless YouTube videos at 2 a.m. Your brain craving something familiar yet fascinating to drift off to. Well, buckle up because I've got a treasure trove of Family Guy secrets that'll either help you sleep peacefully or keep you wide awake wondering how this animated chaos machine actually works. From behind-the-scenes drama to mind-bending production facts, these random tidbits about the Griffin family will give your brain exactly what it needs for that perfect sleepy time content. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind right off the bat. The voice of Stewie Griffin, that diabolical baby genius we all know and love, is performed by the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane himself. But here's the kicker that most people don't realize. MacFarlane originally based Stewie's voice on the legendary actor Rex Harrison, who played Professor Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady. That posh, sophisticated British accent that makes Stewie sound like he stepped out of a Victorian manor. It's basically a baby doing an impression of a 1,960 seconds Broadway star. The irony is delicious when you think about it. This character who spends half his time plotting world domination is essentially channeling a musical theater legend. Now, if you think that's wild, wait until you hear about the show's near-death experience that almost prevented it from becoming the cultural phenomenon we know today. Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice, by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after just 3 seasons, and for a hot minute there, it looked like the Griffin family was done for good. But then something magical happened that literally brought the show back from the dead. DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns created such a massive fan following that Fox had no choice but to resurrect it in 2005. It's like the show became a zombie that refused to stay buried, clawing its way back to life through sheer fan devotion. The creation story of Family Guy itself reads like something out of a fever dream. Seth MacFarlane was just 24 years old when he pitched the show to Fox, making him one of the youngest people ever to create and run their own animated series for a major network. He literally animated the entire pilot episode by himself, spending months hunched over a desk drawing frame after frame while surviving on probably nothing but coffee and determination. The original pitch was actually inspired by his college thesis film called The Life of Larry, which featured a middle-aged man with a talking dog. Sound familiar? That little student film eventually evolved into the multi-million-dollar empire we know today. Speaking of that talking dog, Brian Griffin holds a special place in animation history for reasons you probably never considered. Unlike most cartoon pets who remain perpetually animal-like, Brian is essentially a human character who just happens to be a dog. He drives cars, drinks martinis, writes novels, and engages in complex philosophical debates. MacFarlane has stated that Brian represents his own voice in the show more than any other character, which explains why the dog often serves as the moral compass of the family. It's basically McFarlane having conversations with himself through a talking animal, which, when you think about it, is either brilliant or slightly concerning. The show's controversial humor didn't emerge by accident. It was a carefully calculated rebellion against traditional family sitcoms. McFarlane deliberately set out to create the anti-Simpsons, something that would push every boundary the Simpsons wouldn't touch. Where the Simpsons used gentle satire and heartwarming family moments, Family Guy went nuclear with shock, humor, and deliberately offensive content. The cutaway gags, those random flashback sequences that became the show's signature, were originally McFarlane's solution to a problem he had with traditional sitcom pacing. He wanted to break free from the constraints of linear storytelling and create something that felt more like channel surfing through a fever dream. Here's a production detail that'll make you appreciate the craft behind the chaos. Each episode of Family Guy takes approximately 10 months to complete, from initial script to final animation. That means the episodes you're watching right now were being worked on almost a year ago. The animation process alone involves hundreds of artists working across multiple studios, with the initial designs created in California before being sent overseas for full animation. It's like a massive international relay race, where each handoff has to be perfect or the whole episode falls apart. The voice acting sessions are apparently legendary affairs that sound more like comedy improv shows than traditional recording sessions. McFarlane voices not just Stewie, but also Brian, Peter, and Glenn Quagmire, often having entire conversations with himself in the recording booth. The other voice actors have described watching him switch between characters mid-sentence as both impressive and slightly unsettling. Imagine seeing someone argue with themselves in 4 different voices while maintaining perfect character consistency. It's basically like watching a one-man theater performance in real time. One of the most fascinating aspects of Family Guy's production is how the writer's room operates. Unlike many animated shows that plan seasons far in advance, Family Guy's writing process is notoriously chaotic and last-minute. Writers have described sessions where entire episodes get scrapped days before animation begins, leading to frantic rewrites and sleepless nights. This seat-of-the-pants approach actually contributes to the show's unpredictable energy, but it also means that voice actors sometimes receive new scripts literally hours before recording sessions. The show's relationship with censorship has been a constant dance between pushing boundaries and avoiding network wrath. Family Guy has developed an almost scientific approach to testing limits, deliberately writing jokes that are slightly more offensive than what they actually want to air, knowing that network censors will demand cuts. The final version that reaches viewers is often the writer's actual intended content, achieved through strategic overwriting and negotiation. It's psychological warfare, disguised as comedy writing. McFarlane's musical background plays a much larger role in the show than most people realize. Before creating Family Guy, he was actually a jazz vocalist and pianist, which explains the numerous musical numbers scattered throughout episodes. Those elaborate song and dance sequences aren't just random comedy bits. They're genuine musical theater productions compressed into cartoon format. McFarlane has stated that he views Family Guy as partly a variety show, using the Griffin family as a framework to showcase different types of entertainment within each episode. The character designs themselves tell an interesting story about animation philosophy. Notice how the Griffin family members all have distinctly different body shapes and facial structures, unlike many cartoon families where everyone looks like variations of the same template. Peter's round, doughy appearance was specifically designed to contrast with Lois's sharp, angular features, while Stewie's football-shaped head was meant to make him instantly recognizable even in silhouette. These design choices weren't arbitrary. They were carefully calculated to ensure each character would be visually distinct even in crowded scenes or quick cuts. Here's something that'll change how you watch the show forever. The infamous chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken weren't originally planned as recurring segments. The first chicken fight was supposed to be a one-off gag, but the animation team had so much fun creating the over-the-top action sequence that it became a running theme. Those elaborate, destruction-filled battles that seem to last forever? They're essentially the animation team showing off their action sequence skills in a comedy show, like flexing creative muscles that don't usually get exercised in traditional sitcom animation. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars is uniquely twisted compared to other animated series. While most cartoons treat celebrity appearances as special events, with the famous person playing themselves or a character clearly meant to be them, Family Guy often buries celebrity voices in minor roles without any fanfare. A-list actors will voice background characters for single lines, and viewers might never realize they just heard a famous person deliver a throwaway joke. It's the entertainment industry equivalent of hiding expensive ingredients in cheap fast food. Family Guy's international versions reveal fascinating cultural differences in humor. In some countries, entire episodes have been rewritten because the original jokes simply don't translate, not just linguistically, but culturally. What Americans find hilarious might be completely incomprehensible to audiences in other parts of the world, leading to localized versions that are essentially different shows with the same characters. It's like each country gets its own flavor of the Griffin family chaos, tailored to local sensibilities. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy extends into some surprisingly niche markets. Beyond the obvious t-shirts and DVDs, there are Family Guy-themed wine collections, luxury watches, and even high-end collectible sculptures that cost thousands of dollars. The show that built its reputation on lowbrow humor has somehow spawned upscale merchandise that wouldn't look out of place in expensive boutiques. It's cultural cognitive dissonance at its finest. The writing staff includes people from incredibly diverse backgrounds: former stand-up comedians, Harvard graduates, television veterans, and complete newcomers to the industry. This mix creates a unique creative environment where highbrow intellectual humor crashes into street-level comedy instincts. The result is a show that can reference obscure philosophical concepts in one scene and make fart jokes in the next, often within the same episode. Animation errors in Family Guy have become something of a cult fascination among fans. Unlike other shows that try to hide mistakes, Family Guy occasionally leaves obvious animation goofs in the final product, either intentionally, as Easter eggs, or because the production schedule doesn't allow for fixes. These errors have spawned online communities dedicated to spotting and cataloging every miscolored character, floating object, or impossible perspective. It's accidental, interactive entertainment, where viewers become detectives hunting for visual inconsistencies. The show's theme song, that bouncy piano melody everyone knows by heart, was originally much longer and included additional verses that were cut for time. The full version tells a more complete story about the Griffin family's dynamics, but network television's rigid timing requirements forced it down to the bare essentials. MacFarlane has occasionally performed the complete version at live concerts, giving fans a glimpse of what could have been the opening sequence if television had more flexible formatting. Voice acting for animated shows requires a completely different skill set than live-action performance, and Family Guy pushes these demands to extremes. The actors often need to deliver lines while laughing, crying, or even while their characters are supposed to be eating, fighting, or running. This means recording sessions frequently involve voice actors doing physical comedy performances in sound booths, acting out entire scenes with just their voices, while making exaggerated facial expressions that no one will ever see, but that somehow make the vocal performance more authentic. The show's relationship with current events creates unique production challenges. Because episodes take months to complete, jokes about contemporary issues often feel dated by the time they air, leading to a complex balancing act between topical relevance and timeless humor. Writers have developed strategies for creating content that feels current without being tied to specific news cycles, though sometimes they get caught off guard when major events happen during production and their carefully planned episodes suddenly seem tone-deaf or prescient in ways they never intended. Family Guy's influence on internet culture extends far beyond just memes and viral videos. The show's cutaway gag structure essentially predicted how people would consume media in the social media age. Short, disconnected bursts of content that don't require following a linear narrative. Those seemingly random flashbacks that interrupt the main story? They're basically the television equivalent of scrolling through TikTok or Twitter, jumping from one unrelated thought to another without warning. The economics behind Family Guy reveal interesting insights into how modern television actually works. Despite being an animated show with relatively high production costs, it's incredibly profitable because animated content doesn't age the same way live-action shows do. There are no aging actors demanding higher salaries, no physical sets that deteriorate, and no location shoots that become impossible due to changing landscapes. The Griffin family can theoretically exist forever without any of the logistical problems that eventually kill most television series. Behind all the controversy and chaos, Family Guy operates like a massive creative experiment in pushing the boundaries of what television can be. Every episode is essentially asking the question, What if we tried this completely ridiculous thing and somehow made it work within the framework of a family sitcom? Sometimes the experiments fail spectacularly, but when they succeed, they create moments of television that are genuinely unlike anything else on the air. The show has created its own internal mythology that's become increasingly complex over the years. Character relationships, running gags, and callback references have built up layers of continuity that reward longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. It's like a secret club where the membership requirement is having watched hundreds of hours of animated chaos, and the reward is understanding jokes that are incomprehensible to everyone else. And here's perhaps the most interesting fact about Family Guy. Despite all its success and cultural impact, the show remains fundamentally unpredictable. After more than 2 decades on the air, it can still surprise viewers with completely unexpected creative choices, bizarre guest appearances, or experimental episodes that break its own established rules. In a television landscape increasingly dominated by formulaic content, Family Guy maintains a chaotic creativity that keeps audiences guessing what might happen next. So there you have it. A deep dive into the wonderfully weird world behind one of television's most controversial animated families. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or staying wide awake in fascination, these facts reveal just how much complexity hides behind what appears to be simple cartoon chaos. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the Griffin household, normal is just another word for boring. Have you ever wondered why Peter Griffin's laugh is so weirdly infectious, or how Family Guy predicted some of the most bizarre real-world events years before they happened? Tonight, we're diving deep into the most mind-bending facts about Family Guy that will either put you to sleep or keep you awake thinking about how insane this show really is. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through streaming services, and you land on Family Guy. Maybe you've seen every episode a dozen times, or maybe you're just discovering the chaos that is the Griffin family. Either way, there are secrets hidden in plain sight that even the most dedicated fans miss. From voice acting mysteries that will blow your mind to cultural references so obscure they require a PhD to understand, Family Guy is way more complex than anyone gives it credit for. Let's start with something that sounds completely made up but is absolutely true. Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy, was supposed to be on one of the planes that hit the World Trade Center on September 11th. He had a ticket for American Airlines Flight 11, but missed it because he was hungover and his travel agent gave him the wrong departure time. That single hangover and scheduling mix-up literally changed television history. Without that random twist of fate, we never would have gotten the Griffin family or any of Seth's other animated shows. But here's where it gets even weirder. Family Guy has this uncanny ability to predict future events that borders on supernatural. Remember the episode where Peter hurts his knee and makes that hissing sound while sucking air through his teeth? That became one of the most recognizable memes on the internet, years before memes were even called memes. The show was creating viral content before viral content existed. Speaking of predictions, Family Guy called out Kevin Spacey's behavior in a 2005 episode where Stewie runs naked through a shopping mall and someone says, "Somebody call the police." And another character responds, "I think Kevin Spacey already did. This was more than a decade before the Kevin Spacey scandal broke. How do the writers keep nailing these things?" It's like they have a crystal ball hidden in their writing room. The voice acting situation is absolutely bonkers when you really think about it. Seth MacFarlane voices Peter Griffin, Brian Griffin, Stewie Griffin, Glenn Quagmire, Tom Tucker, and Carter Pewterschmidt, among others. That means he's literally having conversations with himself for huge chunks of every episode. Imagine being in the recording booth talking to yourself as different characters for hours on end. It's like method acting taken to an extreme level. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, also voices Trisha Takanawa and several other female characters. During the early seasons, she was actually a writer on Mad TV, which explains why some of the humor has that sketch comedy feel. The woman can switch between Lois's nasally Long Island accent and Trisha's professional news anchor voice seamlessly. Voice actors don't get nearly enough credit for their range. Here's a fact that will mess with your head. The show was actually canceled twice by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after just 3 seasons. But then something magical happened. Adult Swim started showing reruns, and DVD sales went through the roof. Fox realized they had made a massive mistake and brought the show back in 2005. Then they canceled it again in 2009, But fan outcry was so intense, they reversed the decision within weeks. Family Guy is like a cockroach in the best possible way. It just refuses to die. The animation process is way more complicated than you might think. Each episode takes about 10 months to complete, from initial script to final animation. The overseas animation studios in South Korea handle most of the actual drawing, while the American team focuses on storyboarding and voice work. It's a global operation just to make Peter fall down the stairs, in a funny way. Brian Griffin's character is loosely based on a real dog that Seth MacFarlane's family had when he was growing up. The real Brian was apparently much better behaved than his cartoon counterpart, though. He didn't drink martinis, or write terrible novels, or have existential crises about being a dog. The fictional Brian's pretentious intellectual personality came from Seth's observations of people he knew in college who took themselves way too seriously. The Conway Twitty cutaway gags started as an inside joke among the writers, but became this legendary running bit that fans either love or hate with no middle ground. These segments where the show just cuts to Conway Twitty performing a complete song were meant to be the most random non sequiturs possible. The fact that they kept doing it even when fans complained just made it funnier to the writers. It's comedy through pure stubbornness. Stewie Griffin's sexuality has been a topic of debate for years. Seth MacFarlane has given different answers in interviews ranging from Stewie being gay to being sexually fluid to being too young for any of it to matter. The ambiguity seems intentional. Stewie exists in this weird space where he's simultaneously a baby and this sophisticated character with adult concerns. It's like the writers are deliberately keeping us guessing. The show's relationship with censorship is fascinating. Standards and practices at Fox let certain things slide while being strict about others in ways that seem completely arbitrary. Characters can be violently injured in cartoonish ways, but heaven forbid someone says a particular word or shows too much animated skin. The writers have turned working around censorship into an art form. Cleveland's spin-off show, The Cleveland Show, ran for 4 seasons and was actually pretty decent, but never found the same audience as Family Guy. When Cleveland moved back to Quahog, it felt like a homecoming. Mike Henry, who voiced Cleveland, stepped down from the role in 2020, citing the need for black actors to voice black characters. The recasting brought Arif Zahir into the role, and honestly, the transition was seamless. The show's pop culture references are so dense you could teach entire courses on them. From obscure 1,980 seconds commercials to deep cuts from classic Hollywood movies, the writers assume their audience has an encyclopedic knowledge of American media history. Some references are so specific that you need to be a certain age and from a particular region to get them. It's like they're rewarding viewers for paying attention to decades of television and movies. Peter Griffin's job at the brewery is based on real brewery operations that Seth MacFarlane researched. The Pawtucket Patriot beer is obviously a parody of Samuel Adams, but the actual brewery dynamics and workplace situations are surprisingly accurate. Peter's incompetence is exaggerated for comedy, but apparently real brewery workers have told the writers that some of their workplace storylines hit uncomfortably close to home. The show's theme song is performed by Walter Murphy, who also composed music for Saturday Night Fever. Having a disco legend write your cartoon theme song is the kind of random collaboration that only happens in Hollywood. The orchestral arrangement gives the show this grand, cinematic feel that contrasts perfectly with the chaotic family dynamics. Meg Griffin is voiced by Mila Kunis, who was just 15 years old when she started the role. She's grown up with the character in a way that's pretty unique for voice acting. Lacey Chabert voiced Meg in the first season before scheduling conflicts forced her to step down. The transition happened so smoothly that most viewers didn't even notice the change. The show's animation style has evolved significantly over 20-plus seasons. Early episodes had this rougher hand-drawn quality, while newer episodes are much more polished and computer-assisted. You can literally watch the technology advance by comparing episodes from different eras. The character designs have become more standardized, but somehow less distinctive. Family Guy's influence on internet culture is immeasurable. Before YouTube compilation videos existed, fans were trading Family Guy clips on early file-sharing networks. The show basically invented the concept of animated content going viral. Cutaway gags are perfect for social media because they're self-contained comedy bits that work without context. The writer's room must be absolute chaos. How do you pitch ideas for a show where literally anything can happen? The creative process seems to involve taking normal family situations and pushing them to the most extreme possible conclusions. It's like improv comedy, but with months of animation work required to execute each joke. Seth MacFarlane's other projects, like The Orville and his music albums, show his range beyond comedy, but Family Guy remains his most recognizable creation. The show has become this cultural touchstone that defines a particular era of animated television. Love it or hate it, you can't ignore its impact. The merchandising empire around Family Guy is surprisingly extensive. From t-shirts featuring Stewie's quotes to Peter Griffin action figures, the show has spawned countless products. The fact that people want to wear clothing featuring cartoon characters making inappropriate jokes says something profound about modern comedy consumption. Here's something that will keep you thinking as you drift off to sleep. Family Guy exists in this weird space between family sitcom and surreal comedy experiment. It's simultaneously the most normal and most bizarre show on television. The Griffin family deals with everyday problems, like paying bills and getting along with neighbors. But they also travel through time, fight giant chickens, and have musical numbers about random topics. The show's longevity is a testament to something deeper than just comedy. It's comfort food for your brain. Even when the jokes don't land, there's something familiar and reassuring about Peter's voice or Stewie's elaborate schemes. It's like spending time with dysfunctional friends who make you feel better about your own problems. As you close your eyes tonight, maybe you'll dream about cutaway gags from your own life, or imagine what it would be like to have conversations with your pet, like Brian and the Griffin family. Or maybe you'll just sleep soundly, knowing that somewhere in the world, animators are working on the next episode where Peter does something incredibly stupid and somehow everything works out fine. Sweet dreams, and remember, we all have a little bit of Griffin family chaos in our lives. The difference is, their chaos gets turned into comedy gold, while ours just makes us tired. At least now you know some random Family Guy facts that are just weird enough to either bore you to sleep or keep you awake. Wondering what other secrets are hidden in your favorite animated shows? You know that feeling when you're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and you stumble across something so unexpectedly fascinating that you forget you were even tired? Well, tonight we're diving deep into the chaotic, bizarre, and surprisingly complex world of Peter Griffin from Family Guy. And trust me, by the time we're done unraveling his entire story, you'll understand why this seemingly simple cartoon dad is actually one of television's most intricate characters. Most people think they know Peter Griffin. Fat guy, drinks beer, fights a giant chicken, right? Wrong. What if I told you that Peter's backstory involves multiple identities, time travel, alternate dimensions, and a family tree so twisted it makes soap operas look straightforward? What if I told you that this bumbling father figure has actually died and been resurrected more times than most comic book heroes? Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, let me paint you the complete picture of Peter Griffin's existence, from his mysterious birth to his countless near-death experiences and everything in between. Because once you see the full scope of his story, Family Guy will never look the same again. Let's start at the very beginning, because Peter's origin story is far more complex than you might imagine. Peter Justin Griffin wasn't always a Griffin. He was born Peter McFinnigan in Mexico, though the circumstances of his birth are shrouded in mystery and contradiction. His biological father, Francis Griffin, was an ultra-religious Irish Catholic man whose stern demeanor would later shape much of Peter's rebellious adult personality. But here's where things get interesting. Peter spent his early childhood believing he was Irish, embracing this identity with the kind of enthusiasm only a child can muster. However, his world was turned upside down when he discovered through a series of revelations that his heritage was far more complicated than he ever imagined. The man he thought was his father figure, Francis, represented everything Peter would grow to rebel against: rigid religious doctrine, conservative values, and an inability to express joy or spontaneity. This early trauma of identity confusion would follow Peter throughout his entire life. Think about it. How many episodes revolve around Peter discovering something new about his past or his identity? It's not coincidence. It's the fundamental driving force of his character. He's constantly searching for who he really is, because his foundation was built on uncertainty. Peter's adoption by the Griffin family brought him to Rhode Island, specifically to the fictional town of Quahog. Now, Quahog itself is practically a character in Peter's story. This small New England town serves as both his sanctuary and his prison. It's where he's built his adult life, but it's also where he's trapped in cycles of behavior that prevent him from growing beyond his teenage mentality. The Griffin household on Spooner Street became Peter's universe, and understanding the dynamics of this home is crucial to understanding Peter himself. His relationship with his adoptive family shaped his approach to his own family later in life. The lack of a strong father figure during his formative years explains so much about his parenting style with his own children. Speaking of his children, let's talk about Peter as a father, because this is where his story becomes truly complex. Meg, Chris, and Stewie Griffin represent three different aspects of Peter's own personality reflected back at him. Meg embodies his insecurities and need for acceptance, which is why he treats her so harshly. He's rejecting the parts of himself he dislikes most. Chris represents his simple, well-meaning nature, which is why Peter can sometimes be genuinely caring toward him. And Stewie? Stewie represents Peter's intelligence and ambition, the parts of himself he never developed or explored. The way Peter interacts with each child tells us more about his internal psychology than any therapy session could. When he's cruel to Meg, he's being cruel to his own perceived inadequacies. When he's protective of Chris, he's protecting his own innocence. And when he's bewildered by Stewie, he's confronting the intellectual potential he never realized. Then there's Lois. And oh boy, is their relationship a masterclass in dysfunction disguised as sitcom comedy. Lois Peterschmidt Griffin comes from wealth and privilege, everything Peter never had growing up. Their marriage represents Peter's ultimate conquest. He managed to win over someone completely out of his league, but it also represents his greatest fear, that he's not worthy of love or success. Peter's constant need to prove himself worthy of Lois drives many of his most outrageous schemes and adventures. Every time he starts a business, learns a new skill, or attempts to become famous, he's really trying to prove that Lois was right to choose him. The fact that she stays with him despite his countless failures isn't just comedy gold, it's the foundation of Peter's entire worldview. Now let's talk about Peter's professional life, because his career history reads like a resume from an alternate dimension. He's worked at a toy factory, been a fisherman, tried his hand at entertainment, and held countless other jobs. Each career change represents Peter's ongoing search for his true calling, his desperate attempt to find something that gives his life meaning beyond just being a husband and father. The Pawtucket Patriot Brewery isn't just where Peter works, it's where he found his tribe. His friendship with Glenn Quagmire, Cleveland Brown, and Joe Swanson represents the family he chose for himself. These relationships are arguably the most stable and consistent in his entire life. While his family relationships are complicated by obligation and expectation, his friendships exist purely because he enjoys these people's company. But here's what's fascinating about Peter's friend group. They're all fundamentally broken in their own ways, just like him. Quagmire's hypersexuality, Cleveland's passive nature, and Joe's physical limitations all serve as mirrors for different aspects of Peter's own struggles with masculinity, ambition, and physical insecurity. The infamous chicken fights with Ernie the Giant Chicken deserve special attention because they represent something deeper than just absurd comedy. These epic battles symbolize Peter's relationship with obstacles in general. Instead of finding reasonable solutions to problems, Peter's instinct is to meet challenges head-on with disproportionate force and stubbornness. The chicken fights are metaphors for how Peter approaches every conflict in his life, with excessive energy, poor planning, and a refusal to back down even when he's clearly outmatched. Peter's death and resurrection experiences are another crucial element of his story that often gets overlooked. He's technically died multiple times throughout the series, only to return as if nothing happened. These deaths aren't just reset buttons for the show. They represent Peter's resilience and his refusal to let anything, including mortality, keep him down. Each resurrection reinforces his belief that he's somehow special, somehow protected, which feeds into his often reckless behavior. The alternate timeline and dimension episodes reveal even more about Peter's character. When we see versions of Peter from different realities, we're seeing the paths his life could have taken under different circumstances. Some versions are more successful, others are more tragic, but they're all recognizably Peter at their core. This suggests that regardless of circumstances, certain aspects of his personality are fundamental and unchangeable. Peter's relationship with authority figures throughout the series follows a consistent pattern that traces back to his complicated relationship with his biological father, Francis. Whether he's dealing with his boss, Mr. Weed, later Angela, or any government official, Peter's default response is rebellion. He can't help but challenge authority, not because he has a well-reasoned philosophical objection to hierarchy, but because authority reminds him of the rigid control he experienced in his early religious upbringing. His various business ventures and get-rich-quick schemes reveal Peter's deep-seated belief that success should come easily. This isn't just laziness. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of how achievement works, likely stemming from his upbringing where religious doctrine promised rewards for faith rather than effort. Peter applies this same magical thinking to business, relationships, and personal growth. The running gags and catchphrases that define Peter aren't just comedy elements, they're coping mechanisms. His nigh-he-he-he laugh, his random pop culture references, and his tendency to break into song are all ways he deflects serious, emotional moments. Peter uses humor as a shield against having to confront the deeper issues in his life. Peter's body image and relationship with food tell another important part of his story. His weight isn't just a visual gag. It represents his relationship with comfort and self-control. Food is Peter's primary source of comfort, his go-to solution for stress, boredom, and emotional pain. His eating habits are directly tied to his emotional state, which is why dramatic moments in his life often involve food in some way. The flashback episodes that show Peter at different ages reveal how his core personality traits were established early and have remained remarkably consistent. Young Peter displays the same impulsiveness, the same need for attention, and the same difficulty with authority that define adult Peter. This consistency suggests that Peter's behavior isn't really about his circumstances. It's about deeply ingrained patterns of thinking and responding to the world. Peter's occasional moments of genuine wisdom and insight are perhaps the most revealing aspects of his character. When he drops his usual antics and speaks from the heart, we see glimpses of the person he could be if he wasn't so afraid of being vulnerable. These moments are rare, but they show that Peter's intelligence and emotional capacity are much greater than his usual behavior suggests. His relationship with popular culture and media consumption reflects modern society's relationship with information and entertainment. Peter absorbs pop culture references without really understanding their context or meaning, much like how many people today consume information. He's a character designed for the internet age, even though he was created before social media existed. The international episodes where Peter travels to different countries reveal his American-centric worldview, while also showing his capacity to adapt when forced out of his comfort zone. These adventures don't fundamentally change him, but they do show that he's capable of growth when his usual coping mechanisms aren't available. Peter's various nemesis throughout the series, from the chicken to his own father to random authority figures, all represent different aspects of his internal struggles. He's not really fighting these external enemies. He's fighting parts of himself that he can't accept or integrate. As we wrap up this deep dive into Peter Griffin's complete story, it's important to recognize that his character represents something universal about the human experience. We all struggle with identity. We all rebel against aspects of our upbringing. We all fear that we're not worthy of the love we've received, and we all use various coping mechanisms to avoid confronting our deepest insecurities. Peter Griffin isn't just a cartoon character. He's a mirror reflecting our own struggles with adulthood, responsibility, and self-acceptance. His story is ultimately about someone trying to figure out how to be a good person despite being fundamentally unprepared for adult life. And in that struggle, we see ourselves. So the next time you watch Family Guy, remember that you're not just watching random comedy sketches. You're witnessing the ongoing saga of a man wrestling with the same questions we all face. Who am I really? Am I good enough? And how do I build a meaningful life when I feel completely overwhelmed by the complexity of existence? Sweet dreams. And remember, we're all just trying to figure it out as we go along, just like Peter Griffin.